Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of In the Prog Seat. It's Tuesday night. You guys ready for another album study? Well, we are. Before we reveal, well, you've already seen the thumbnail of the video, so you know what the album is. But let me introduce the crew here today. We got all the way the Twin Towers from Chicago, Mr. Louis Nasser, Mr. George Lemay, Ken Golden, the Professor of Prague, is in the house. Our center square is Chuck Alvarez from New York City. And our two folks from Pennsylvania, we got Anthony Ferraro and Chad. Don't call him Rich Williams Hutchinson. What's going on?
Howdy, y'all.
Yeehaw.
So today's album study, we're gonna talk about an American band for a week. We don't do that too often here, but we are today. It was my turn to pick an album, and I decided it was time for us to talk about Kansas. And I said, well, we talk a lot about Left Overture. We talk a lot about Point and No Return. So let's pick one of the other ones. And there's a few other ones that are really good. And I decided to go with their second album, Song for America. Right. So, of course, this is on the Kirshner Records, released February 1975, produced by Jeff Glicksman and Wally Gold. This also was recorded at Wally Hader's Studio 3 in Hollywood, California. Imagine being this band, from Kansas, from out in the sticks, and they actually get to go to Hollywood to record their second album. Pretty cool, right?
Pretty good sounding album.
Yeah, it is, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say the same exact thing.
Yeah, yeah. This was a pretty good seller for the band. This reached number 57 on the Billboard album chart and was certified gold, 500,000 copies as of the last certification. Most of their 70s albums did pretty well. Of course, in the band, Steve Walsh on vocals, keyboards, Kerry Livgren on guitars and keyboards, backing vocals, Dave Hope on bass, Robbie Steinhardt on violin, lead and backing vocals, Rich Williams on guitar, and Phil E. Hart on the drums. And all guys took part in songwriting. And like I said, you got multiple singers in the band. So all sorts of rich sounds coming from this particular band and this album. And, here, early on with the band's sound, you get a good mix of their brand of American progressive rock. And this band, highly influenced by the British bands that we talk about quite a bit. So you can read lots of interviews with the members of the bands, and they'll talk about how much they grew up listening to like Yes and Gentle Giant and King Crimson and Genesis and ELP and whatnot. And you can hear it in their music, but there's also a strong kind of like bluesy hard rock feel going on a couple of songs on this album, and that would carry over on most of their albums, especially early on. And this album, not jam-packed with a lot of songs. Most of the Kansas albums are pretty, especially the early ones, pretty compact, because you do have some longer pieces. So here we've got Down the Road, which is one of their harder rocking songs here. It's got lots of guitar and violin on it. It's a good hard rocker. Song for America, the title track, arguably for many people a top 5 Kansas song. Just gorgeous slice of American progressive rock. Great keyboards, great violin, great vocals. Not a big guitar song, but you really don't miss it at all. You got Lamplight Symphony, another proggy one from the band. Great Steve Walsh vocals on that one. A little bit darker sound, right, than the first 2 tracks. Big dramatic arrangement. Love the bass on this whole album. Dave Hope's bass is very, very prominent in the mix on this whole album, which I really like. Loads of Hammond organ on here. Great Moog. Lots of violin and guitar back and forth going on too. Really, really good song. Lonely Streets, another hard rocker from the band. A lot of guitars in this. Rich Williams and Kerry Livgren, really good guitar duo. In fact, highly underrated, I would say. The Devil Game, another hard rocker. Lots of Hammond, lots of guitar. Interesting
Violin
lyrics, which we'll talk about a little bit as we go through the show here, the lyrical content of this album. A lot of blistering guitar solos, nice Hammond and violin tracks as well. And then, of course, you got the big epic 12-minute track, In Comodro, Hymn to the Atman, to finish it all off with. And again, they always usually throw in a big, long, proggy epic on most of their albums that, anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes or so. A lot of really good stuff on here. Great Moog on here, drum solos, all sorts of stuff, blazing finale. So really, really good. I'm a big fan of this album. It's one of my favorite Kansas records. It's generally not my number 1 or 2, but it's usually 3 or 4, something like that, thereabouts. So I'm curious to hear your guys' take on this. And I want to go with the guy who probably never listened to this album before he got this assignment first, and that would be Mr. Golden.
The thing is, I did a little research because growing up, Kansas, in the New York area, maybe Chuck could agree or disagree with me. In the New York area, Kansas were like a non-factor. You really didn't hear them on the radio at all, on progressive radio. You heard
Except for 2 songs.
You heard the hits. You heard, later on, Dust in the Wind, Carry On Wayward Son. And that's really it. In fact, I looked them up. They played the Bottom Line, which, if any of you know, the Bottom Line holds about 300 people. Then they went to the Academy of Music, got renamed to the Palladium. They were a headliner there. And then they played Madison Square Garden, opening for Bad Company. They were in the New York market. They were a big nothing. So they were never on my radar. I mean, I knew that they were considered a prog band. To me, I just always kind of lumped them in with REO Speedwagon and, all this sort of Midwest, the Michael Stanley band, all this Midwest hard rock. Then I heard the radio stuff and frankly, those tunes, they're nice tunes, but they're not particularly interesting to me. So I just moved on to other things. I picked up a bunch of their albums at a flea market about 20 years ago, and you guys gave me an excuse to play Song for America. So, and it's a nice album. So I'll give you my rundown. Down the road, I'm reading from my notes. I wrote Showcase for Robbie Steinhardt. Vocals are pretty good. The lyrics are idiotic. It's a throwaway track. Well, it's a song about basically like a drug addict, if you read the lyrics, right? I mean, it was like,
it's a guy that committed a murder, got sent to jail.
Yeah, well, great. He's, it was like Ratso Rizzo or something like that. Song for America. I wrote majestic and great long instrumental opening. This sounds like Kansas. I think a lot of that sound is Walsh's underpinning on organ. And I just want to talk in a minute. I'll talk about the organ. Liverman stands out, piano and synthesizer, nice violin, then the return of the synth, vocal harmonies that define the Kansas sound. I'm assuming all the cool synth runs are Kerry. I give that tune an A-. But one of the things I want to say is that the way they use the organ, which seems to be sort of like a trademark of this band, and I'm sure I'm wrong. You'll tell me I'm wrong because I'm not listening to the breadth of their catalog. But it seems there's organ on all the tracks, but there isn't. But it's sort of like an underpinning. It's just there. You hear the chords, but you don't hear like runs. You don't hear organ solos or anything like that. It's blocks of sound.
It's mostly played by Steve Walsh, and he's not really known as much of a soloist. But he definitely is like the color guy among the two keyboard players.
Yeah, there's some nice piano and synthesizer on this album, and there's plenty of organ, and I kind of associate the organ with them, but it's just kind of there, It's just part of the sound. Next tune, Lamplight Symphony. I wrote maudlin themed ghost story, but the music makes up for it. The instrumental section really ignites the tune. Great interlocking between violin and synthesizer, builds beautifully. I gave it an A. It was a nice tune. Lonely Street, blues tune. Twin guitar did nothing for me. Could have been any band. I gave it a C-. I thought it was kind of a shitty tune. I mean, when these guys are doing blues, they're a bar band, honestly, and there's nothing special about what they do versus what anybody else is doing when it's that kind of a thing.
Now, Ken, you're not going to hear Steve Walsh singing in a bar band. He's like one of the best vocalists out there. Lonely Street is a jammer.
He's not talking about the vocals.
I'm not talking about the vocals. I mean,
you said any bar band could do it. Walshy is not a bar band singer.
As a tune, it's a nothing tune.
Oh, it's a good tune.
It's just blues. How much blues?
No, it's a good tune. If you like Walshy, the thing rocks. His vocals on it are fantastic.
Oh, okay. That's great.
That's a great argument.
We'll hear Anthony talk about how much he loves that song when it's his turn. I know.
That's a great argument.
Yeah, it's really great. It's a shitty blues tune. The Devil Game. I wrote more of an up-tempo hard rock tune, touches of Deep Purple around the edges, good unison lines on the guitar and violin. I gave it like a B-. I thought it was okay. In Camundro. So this is the track the whole album is building towards. The instrumental section has a relaxed quality that seems like the band is more comfortable in. The music breathes. When the synth solo kicks in, it turns into a killer cosmic boogie. I forgive them for the drum solo. I love the space they give to the violin. I gave it an A+. I thought it was a great song. Overall, I did a little math here, and it weighed out for me because there were those two tracks which really kind of blow. I gave it a B. I gave it a solid B. If they would have left out those two tunes, it would have definitely skewed higher.
So Ken, how much of an impact having a violin player in this band gives them like a certain edge or like a little bit of specialness, do you think?
Well, certainly they didn't have a lot of competition on that front.
Right.
You know,
Anthony?
the interesting thing about this band
Yeah, but
is,
it's a different kind of sound.
to me, this is not a European sounding band. I understand the influences are there. You know, obvious, they might have heard, Yes, they didn't listen to Yes as carefully as Starcastle did, for example.
Right.
But, but, there is that kind of, that sort of, I hate to say it, that Southern thing kind of creeps in here and there. It's clearly an American sound. It's more of a, with the way I hear it, more of a blues-based sound rather than the European bands, which seem to be more classically influenced. So
I think it depends on the song. Like the
Well,
two songs,
Yeah, and the
two
album
songs you
too.
put in the trash are definitely more blues oriented, but the other four, which is going to be more Terry Livgren, has that more of European influence.
it maybe, and maybe it's the production, maybe it's the way they do the vocal harmonies. The vocal harmonies are very nice, but after a while, it's a little bit of like a formula. It's like a Kansas thing that they do. All those harmonies, they kind of wear on me a little bit. I mean, it's when you listen to Yes, I want to hear John Anderson. It's great when Squire and Hal come in and they all harmonize, and it's fine when Kansas does it. I would prefer to hear more Steve Walsh than all of those guys singing together. It's perfectly fine, but after a while, it becomes a little bit of a cliche for me. A little bit. I'm not offensive or anything, but it's just something that stands out for me. That's all.
Got you. Okay.
I wouldn't mistake these guys. I wouldn't mistake Kansas for an English band.
Right. No. Yeah, they definitely do sound American, and I think they have their own style.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
And one of the first bands really here in the States to really do this of any prominence, right? Whether or not they weren't the first band, but the first band to start selling records like in these quantities, doing this.
To sell records, yeah. I mean, there were a lot of bands doing it, but in terms of moving units and having real popularity, of course, Kansas, and I would guess that the bulk of their fan base came from the Midwest. I was certainly the Northeast. They were a big zero. So
The second market they really broke was Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. Apparently, they had a lot of following in Pennsylvania, and they would bounce back and forth between the two cities.
Yeah, well, drive out through Pennsylvania, you can understand why. I mean, it's you drive through, you drive through Pennsylvania. It's like driving through Ohio or anywhere else. I mean, it's a lot of farmland.
Yep. All right, let's Anthony, we'll have you go next. Your thoughts on
the
Ken,
rebuttal.
here's where you're wrong, Ken.
The rebuttal.
I've been listening to this since probably 1986, 1987. I think it's one of my favorites. They're one of my favorite bands. Saw them 3 times. Met Robbie in 1997 at a show in Mechanicsburg. Really cool guy. Down the road, as Ken was going through the track list, Down the Road, I think is a jammer. I don't really pay attention to Kansas lyrics too much for some reason. I never did, but I love the interludes between Robbie and Walsh. I always thought they were both great vocalists, kind of like what Styx had with Tommy and Dennis DeYoung. Track 2, Song for America, that's kind of like the typical prog epic. Our Weather Channel here used to actually play that song during the weather sometimes. It was so cool. They played the instrumental part. Track 3, Lamplight Symphony, Ken says one of their best. I think the vocals in that are fantastic. Has a nice mood. The keys are awesome as usual. Now we get to Ken's favorite, Lonely Street, or Lonely Street. Now it's kind of sometimes I wonder if it even fits on the record because it's just like a moody kind of like tune that you might listen to at night with this killer guitar by Livgren. And I think Walsh's vocals are fantastic, just kind of like angry and just forceful. And what a voice. He, like, to me, he's like top 5 vocalist. Fantastic. Then you have The Devil Game, another kind of tune that fits on the album. Great keyboards, another great Walsh vocal. And then you have the epic In Commudro, Hymn to the Atman. I understand Ken with the guitar, with the drum solo, because I think How My Soul Cries Out for You has a drum solo too, right, Pete? Off of Monolith, kind of like the same thing. I don't know where the drum solos fits, but I think Walsh uses some kind of effects on his voice, I think, because you can tell it's like I don't know if it's like a
they're playing them through a flanger,
but it's kind of a cool effect.
The drums are flanged.
Okay. But that's like probably like one of my top 5 tunes by them. It's just what a way to end the album. And if you think about this band, they released another album later that year that's almost just as good that we might be talking about down the road. But this is one of my favorites. They're a great band. I always thought that they were the best American prog band. Dream Theater fans are going to hate me, but I always felt that they were the best American prog band. And I remember reading excerpts from Kerry Livgren, how he talked about he was a big fan of the Musical Box and how that was one of the songs that they influenced the band before they even became Kansas. So yeah, I'm a huge fan. Love it. And I love the cover. I think the cover is so cool.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, that's dynamite. That's a really, really good painting there. Very cool stuff. And actually, it's funny because I always, again, like, what is this thing? It's kind of like this spider creature sort of with a beak.
It's the eagle. It's like
it's a crow.
It's a crow with like a million.
Some kind of hunting bird, right?
It's a crow. It's a black American crow. The corvid.
So it's race.
Well, we do have a bird watcher here, so
that's right.
I see all these things, and I'm like, to me, it's almost like it looks like legs or something like that. But I guess
they're talons, right?
It's just like the talons coming straight at you.
Yeah.
To me, that kind of goes with the lyrics of "Song for America." It's about the destruction.
I guess one of my favorite parts about the band as a whole, Pete, is I love the interludes between Robbie and Steve. I think they go back and forth so great together. They just have those perfect voices, and that's Kansas to me. And I love they harmonize beautifully together too.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Louis, you touched upon and I'll have you go next, but you talked about the lyrics here, specifically about the title track. And I think again, I'm not much of a lyric guy, but I think the lyrics to that song are really touching because, it talks about how beautiful and pure like America or North America was before, way before it became what it is today. And it's interesting. You read the lyrics to that and how topical it is today when all you hear is overpopulation and overdevelopment and border control and all this nonsense. And Kerry is really trying to kind of hone in on what this land must have been like and how beautiful it must have been like before people came and just tried to take it over and whatnot. So I'll have you talk about the album from there. All
right, so I'm gonna echo a little bit of what Ken said with one caveat. Kansas is a band that I am kind of new with. And the reason is that the only song they ever played of them in Mexico on the radio was Dust in the Wind. And that sort of fit into this mold of bands that were named after places in the States that were either super corny, super syrupy, or just Velveeta, right? Mm-hmm. So I just systematically avoided them all. I mean, my first Chicago was the Peter Cetera ballad Chicago. That was shit. So I just Boston to me when I first heard it, I was into Sabbath and Maiden. That didn't fly right for me as a kid. So I didn't really listen to them, and it's only thanks to the guys in Sona Sombra, in particular Rich Poston, who really was hammering this band, and Rowie Ben Joseph too. And I started listening to them maybe 2 years ago. So my take on this, as people know, I'm kind of the opposite from Pete. I do care about the lyrics. And I think that this album it really is kind of like Ken said, it's a story of two parts. You have some songs that are not very interesting at all musically, and the lyrics are just terrible. It's fucking terrible. But then you have other songs where, like Song for America and Hymn to the Atman, that I just really like everything about them. To me, they're two songs where they gave enough attention to everything they did. It wasn't just the music, is the lyrics have to match the effort placed in the music. And those songs are fantastic. I hadn't picked up on the fact that Steve Walsh is just playing pads in the organ, but I think that's a very good observation. There's definitely no shreddy Hammond solos anywhere. Unlike Ken, though, I don't forgive him the drum solo. I think the drum solo, that should have hit the cutting room floor. Their drummer is not great. I'm not saying he's bad, but I don't need to hear that solo. That, to me, in a show, I've never seen them, by the way. Every time they play, I'm always on tour or something happens. This summer is no exception. They're going to play Chicago Theater, and I'm going to be out. But drum solo, like a bass solo, and I'm a bassist, is usually a piss break. So it's not really that interesting unless you're Neil Peart or a different kind of bassist, right? So I don't know. I love what I love of this record a lot, but the stuff I don't like, I really don't like. And in particular, I would say that the way they use the violin, it's unfair that I say this because I'm coming at it after having heard lots of other things, right? So I didn't get the impact of what they were doing at the time they were doing it, right? The same thing happened to me with Alice Cooper. I couldn't really give it a fair shake initially because it sounded cliche, but the dude invented a lot of that, right? So I like what they do. A lot of it is a little. I guess when Ken was talking about European versus American, there is a very upbeat positivity to a lot of this stuff, even the dramatic parts that you wouldn't find in like the dramatic parts of Tarkus or other epics, right? It's a different aesthetic, different compositional aesthetic. I like them. I wish they had edited some of the stuff more carefully. Maybe the album would have been a little bit shorter, but it would have been so much better. And I don't really know why they do have filler. This is my opinion. I know people love Steve Walsh's vocals. He's not a bad singer by any means, but a good singer can't save a bad song. That's just a fact. So the dude is in his prime was great, but if the songs are lame, the songs are lame, right? So I like this album a lot, but like I said, the parts that I like, I really love. But I find that I have to skip, right? And I actually prefer Mask to this record, which is the other one they made this year, right? I believe. I prefer that one. But this has got some, Lamplight Symphony is beautiful, The Closer, Song for America. The rest of the stuff, the opening track, like Mask, is just laughably bad. I don't know why they do that.
That was a bad song. That was a really bad song.
Mask, the opening for Mask is equally bad. I know we're not talking about Mask, but it's like a pattern there. I don't know why.
No.
They were, for whatever reason, they were big fans of throwing in like a meat and potatoes like Southern Boogie song on every
so
up
you see
a point, like the first couple
episodes. It's like a bar band, it's like bar band rock.
Let me throw a theory I've had of Kansas, and you guys can correct me. Right? I believe they were a little bit embarrassed of being accused of being too pretentious and too artsy-fartsy with all their explorations. So they were really trying hard to prove they were just a regular rock band, man. We're not like those limeys. And I think that that doesn't work. I think that you should embrace your best stuff and give zero fucks about what people are going to say.
No, I think honestly, I think it was more I'll call it competition between the writing of Kerry Livgren and the writing of Steve Walsh. They were completely different, and they both brought material to the table.
So there you go. Maybe they should have just given Walsh more coke and let Kerry write more songs, and everybody would have been fine.
I think he had enough.
Walsh didn't bring
Yeah.
anything to the table for Left Overture, and that album's a masterpiece.
There you go. So
Got no boogies on that one.
I guess I rest my case, but it's a good album. I came into it late, so I can't really give it a. It never had the impression on me that it had on Anthony for sure, because 1986, no way I was listening to that, but it's not bad. That's what I would say. And of course, when it's good, it's fucking amazing.
Louis, you with me? A solid B?
Yeah. That's what I would give it. I mean, I bought it. I'm never selling it, but I'm always skipping.
Thank you for the affirmation.
Chad, do you think?
Pete, I was going to say, I'm sorry to interject, but I was going to say, I find it kind of funny, like Anthony talks about, like Lonely Street. To me, that's a generic blues song, and if I would and I'd play for you guys some really good electric blues, you wouldn't even consider listening to it. But this tune, which to me is like a big nothing, and you guys are all over it. I don't know, just saying.
Don't get too generic in your comments yet.
Chad, we're going to move over to you. Chad, before you start talking about the album, a question for you. So we've been talking a bit, and Louis touched on it, about how, when they do what we know they do really well, they excel. And when they do like the kind of bluesy rock boogie stuff, that's maybe not really what Kansas are all about. Do you think if they ever early on decided just to do that sort of thing, would they ever gotten big?
No, no way.
Yeah.
No chance.
Yep.
No, I mean, I think they were part of the interest in them originally on was the violin, but that would have only gotten them so far.
Yeah.
Like Ken said, it's about the songs. If the songs weren't good or interesting and they never moved out of that boogie rock, they'd have been pigeonholed, and that's it. They would have stayed in Topeka.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it was really important for this band that they let the genius of Kerry Livgren rise pretty early on. And you could tell, like, all the stuff that he touched was usually some of the strongest material on each album. And then when he finally was doing most of the writing for these albums, the albums became classics, right? So anyway, I'll let you talk a little bit about Song for America.
Sure. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this album. I think it's definitely one of my top 5 of Kansas albums. It's definitely a major step up from the first one, not only sonically, but in the writing. I think they did on on the upwards of 270 shows to support that first album, opening from everyone from the Kinks to Queen. And they got to be much better players while they were out there. They've got to be a tighter band while they were on the road. And because they were on the road the whole time, that's where they did a lot of the writing. So, they would do things in sound checks and things like that. But that first album still has great songs, and you can see where they were going. Things like Balex's Journey from Mariabron, Aperçu, and Death of a Mother Nature Suite, all great songs.
Yep.
Are they quite the caliber of what's on Song for America? No, but they're definitely really, really good songs. I will agree that Lonely Street is the low point. I would definitely get rid of that if I could. I don't need that song whatsoever. The lyrics are generic. It's a bluesy tune, and it's got some extra punch to it because of it's Kansas and they're trying to do something to it, but it's not a great song. I would throw it away. But going back to the beginning, Down the Road, it's kind of a fun, upbeat opener. A lot of violin. Robbie's really assertive with the vocals, but it is a boogie tune. But it's an all right hard rock song. Personally, I don't know why they didn't start this album with Song for America. It's such an epic. It's so big. It's the title track. Yep. Just flip those 2 songs. Put Song for America first, and if you're going to keep Down the Road, put that second. I think it would totally improve the flow of this album.
I agree.
Speaking of Song for America, it's one of my top 3 Kansas songs of all time. I've always loved this song. 10-minute epic. I love the fact for the single they actually cut it down to just over 3 minutes. It's unbelievable to listen to.
Well, that's like a travesty, right? Yeah.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Ridiculous.
It's just no instrumental bits, just the vocals, and then it's over. It's ridiculous. But Pete, you touched on the theme of it, so I won't go there. But I found it interesting that they gave Steve Walsh like the positive side of the story. Like, here's what America looked like before, and then Robbie comes in and he gets all the negative with people coming across the ocean and just taking advantage and ripping up and plundering the beautiful countryside. One thing I did notice about this, or I've always noticed about this, I can't help but to follow Dave Hope's bass on this. I just love when he plays all the way through this song. He does cool little licks and great counter themes, just great. Yeah, exactly.
He's always doing something. Isn't it amazing how, like, when you really listen to it, I almost never noticed it before, and I touched on it before, there's almost no guitar in the song. And you don't even miss it, really.
Yeah, don't tell Eric.
Yeah, I know, right?
I mean, I do spy a bass guitar behind Chad, so
right there
you go. Yeah.
I think it came with the house.
so did the hat. I was going to say, I went back and rewatched the Miracles Out of Nowhere documentary, and it is interesting to listen to those 6 guys talk about their early days. Yeah. But Kerry actually finished writing the song as they were flying to the recording session in California for Song for America. So I guess he was looking out the airline window, looking at the countryside and the farmlands and all that, and wondering, what did this look like before it was subdivided? Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Can I ask you a question, Chad? Since you know a lot about these guys. I've noticed that they have a lot of American Indian motifs in some of their covers and some of their.
They do, yeah.
So, do you think that this is what I mean? I guess that comes from Kerry Livgren.
I think it's more
because the whole point of the Native Americans was that you don't own the land; it's a question of stewardship, right?
Yeah,
and that in a way, I guess if you're into that sort of vibe, is a sort of a more Christian kind of caring philosophy about everyone and everything.
Yeah, and he wasn't a Christian yet, but he was definitely dabbling in Eastern religions, Hindus and Buddhism, things like that.
I thought that was interesting that they have all these things, and that's a beautiful song and great lyrics, really good.
Yeah, it's a great song. Like I said, one of my top. Lamplight Symphony, another great song, more melancholy of a beginning. It's got the story of a man who lost his wife to some beast out in the snow, and he's thinking about her in the middle of the night, and then she appears as an apparition and says they'll be together again at some point. And I even think that the instrumental section of that is I can almost see that as like a flashback. The way that's paced, like it's sort of like her getting attacked and killed, and then him thinking about her and feeling sad when you get into the violin theme, and maybe having to bury her or whatever. So I think the music actually ties a little bit into the scenery there. But it's a nice song, but it is more symphonic and definitely rather sad. We don't need to talk about Lonely Street again. Like I said, I'd get rid of it. Devil Game's one of those songs that they have on several of their albums. It's one of these shorter songs. It's just chock full of themes and playing and tempos. I throw Balexes in there from the first album. Child of Innocence and Mysteries and Mayhem from Mask. Maybe even Opus Insert from Left Overture. So just these really tight, very busy. I think they're fun songs. A song like Child of Innocence, that's for me. That's putting the pedal down. Love that song.
Oh yeah.
But this is another one. Devil Game, it's dense. It's a really dense song. There's a great violin opening, and there's some really cool. You're talking about Steve Walsh and his not so much soloing, but his organ playing. He does some great stabs in that song during the main theme. And even there's some dueling guitars or doing that dueling, but dual guitars closer to the end that remind me a little bit of the sound that Brian May gets out of his guitar. And I wonder if they picked up that sound after playing with them. And incidentally, Brian May's a fan of them, because when they played together, he said he would stand on the side of the stage with Freddie Mercury and go, "This guy's damn good." So that was a pretty cool compliment.
I have a question about the devil. Am I the only one who's bothered by the juxtaposition of the fact that the music's kind of up, but the lyrics are about "Don't let the devil take your soul"? It's kind of a weird. Like I don't get it. Like it's a mixed message. Like why are you playing this upbeat rock? Are you telling people, "Hey man, be careful. This guy's gonna fuck you up real good"? It's a little weird.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
I guess people don't listen to the words, and that's totally fine. I'm not judging.
Hey,
I'm just saying,
Luis, remember the devil went down
for me.
Double
Yeah, but
came from
this
Kansas.
guy, when I heard it and I got the mood, I thought it was a double meaning. I thought it was kind of like, yeah, but we kind of want him to, you know? It all seemed very consensual somehow. It's just very strange.
I think Kerry was just kind of at the time struggling with how to deliver the message of good versus evil, because he was starting to become much more spiritual in his personal life. So I think that some of the more Christian themed lyrical content that we saw on the early albums is a little naive yet on his part. And it's not, I think one of the things I think that always so great about him as a songwriter is, and I put this in my notes, because, you listen to the music of Kansas and you read some of the lyrics, and here you have a guy, their main songwriter was a born again Christian, yet the lyrics don't go overboard down that path. And you listen, you maybe compare to
but the thing is, he wasn't a born again Christian until
not yet.
1980.
Right,
so he was on that search.
Yeah, he was going down that path, but he didn't become right. That's a good point. But even at that point in time, like you listen to like some of Neil Morse's lyrics versus Kerry Livgren's lyrics, and there's a difference there, right? Like
there's a lack of overtness.
Yeah,
which I like.
But this would be.
I'd much rather listen to that.
But wouldn't this be more like the lyrics on The Water, let's say, that era Spock's Beard? Mm-hmm. Where before Neil became full on, into that? Because I
sure,
find
even stuff like The Doorway.
Yeah. I think those songs, for me, worked a lot better because, there is an undertow of a personal search, but there isn't. It's not like going to church.
Yes, it's not preachy. Totally
it's one thing if somebody's on a spiritual journey. It's another thing when they bludgeon you with it.
I think so. Yeah. And I like this about this record. They don't bludgeon you.
No.
I was just distracted sometimes by there was a mismatch between message and music.
Yeah, and I would say
Song for America, not in Incomudro, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. And I would say Kansas and even Kerry Livgren's solo stuff, where he, when he went much more Christian lyrics, he never quite, I'll use your word, bludgeoned. Now, his solo stuff was much more overt, but not quite Neil Morse, shall we say. But while he was in Kansas, even after Steve Walsh left, I still don't think it quite got preachy. But I prefer these albums from Kansas to Audio Visions, which were he's still on that search, or he's just about there. There's songs on Audio Visions like Hold On that are much. I still don't want to use the word overt for that, but it's a little clearer what he's talking about there than something like Incomudro, Hymn for the Atman. Yeah. But speaking of that song, so I did a little research on this one, a little deep research actually, and an Atman is like, it's sort of translated as a soul or self, but it's more like the unchanging and everlasting essence of a human that continues on even after you die. It doesn't, and it's not changed. Whatever it was when you were born, that's how it stays. It's kind of an interesting, weird concept. And it's like Kerry Livgren brought in themes from Zen Buddhism and Hinduism, and this is a lot more abstract. He talks a little bit about reincarnation, specifically from his novel called Seeds of Change that I read a long time ago, and a friend of mine still has, so I asked him to send me a photo of a few pictures. Thank you, Randy. He talks about the void, and the void is a reference to like nirvana or nothingness that a lot of Eastern religions search for. So there's a lot of that, him searching these different Eastern religions in that song. I agree, the 1 minute and 40-second drum solo could have just been cut, completely not necessary. Yes, I timed it because I had to.
Yes.
And one thing I thought was neat, the second part of the instrumental bit It brings in a synth and a groove that reminds me a lot of Camel. If you go back and listen to it, it really reminds me of a lot of that sort of the classic Camel records. Not that they were influenced, but one thing I wanted to mention before I forget, the Devil Game, as we're talking about Kerry Livgren, that song was actually written by Steve Walsh and Dave Hope. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much Livgren is in there as far as lyrics. I know they all worked on the songs together, and maybe the initial idea came from Steve Walsh, but yeah, as much as that's talking about the devil, maybe again that's one of those songs where, as Steve Walsh put it in the documentary, he would, kind of compete with Kerry for songwriting. So maybe it was time for him to do something about something pseudo-religious, and he picked the devil, and it didn't match the music, and there you have
it. That explains everything.
They could. So, on the whole, I think Songs of America is a great record. It could be 5 minutes and 4 seconds shorter. I'm sorry, 5 minutes and 4 seconds plus an hour plus a minute 40. So we're talking 6 minutes and 44 seconds shorter. That would be great. No drum solo.
Basically an EP. You turn the album into an EP.
No, Van Halen 1984 is 36 minutes.
Diver Down's even shorter, I think.
Oh.
So I'm
Slayer, Rain and Blood is 29 minutes and 40.
Come on, that's ultimate metal. I don't want to hear this shit. Just because you can put 80 minutes in a record doesn't mean you should.
That's right.
So
this could be a 39-minute album, and that would be perfectly fine because the rest of the material is good. Just switch Song for America and Down the Road as far as the order, and it's an even better album. So
Song for America should have been the first song on it.
Solid,
amazing, just
great
amazing.
Pick, Pete. Real good pick, Pete.
Cool. All right, Chuck, what do you say?
All right. Normally I'm usually upbeat and I'm usually very positive with a lot of albums that I've spoken about over here. And so this album over here, I usually would prefer to listen to the albums that bookended, which is their eponymous album, the debut, and Mask. Those are the albums from these three that I listen to more than I do this album. But this album still doesn't mean that it's not a bad album. Now, I'm going to go a little bit against Ken in regards to music being played from Kansas. They used to play Song for America here in New York City all the time. They usually would play the abridged version where they would cut there's a little solo part. they would cut like a little small a snippet, like probably like a minute snippet off of it, and then they would just play it as is. The version that they usually play is on the greatest hits, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that cuts off a good minute and a half.
So that's usually the version that they would play on the radio here. Which another song that I used to also hear quite a bit on New York radio over here was Down the Road, oddly. And that's a song that I really was never too crazy about, and which is just like everybody else over here. I wish that they had actually played that they had actually started with Song for America first and left Down the Road for probably like a B-side or something. Always loved Lamplight Symphony. Very sad, morose song. Just listening to the lyrics. When you read the lyrics and you listen to the music, I'm harking to what Chad says, and so it's quite torturous, man. The music actually goes with what you believe is the actual slaughter, and then the husband going to find his wife and then burying her. Always one of my favorite songs on there. Lonely Street, I could take it or leave it, and so it does bang, and so, but I just think that lyrically, I think it's a silly song. The Devil's Game, I always love that song. It's one of my top songs, probably like my top 3 on this album. Always love that. Yeah, no, I always loved the song. I never had any problems with it.
Good rocker.
It really does rock. So does Down the Road. Down the Road rocks as well. And so, but it's just like the first 3 albums, they would have that one song that they start the album with, and then you're just like, gosh, these guys really like into prog, and so.
Yeah, this Down the Road's very similar to Can I Tell You?
Yes, Can I Tell You? Can I Tell You is anyway. But then you get to in Commodore, him to Atman. Outside of that awful drum solo, I just really hate that drum solo. Sometimes I hate it so much that I can't even make it through the whole song. That's how much I hate it.
Oh, stop.
He's
No,
a really good drummer too. But yeah,
no, he's an awesome drummer. It just I just don't like the way it sounds, because
Oh man, you guys are dramatic.
No. Look, I like sardines. I like peanut butter and jam. I don't like to eat them together. That fucking solo doesn't belong in that song.
Yeah, no, I don't like it, man. I wish that he had went through a different approach or just not even put it on there in the first place, man. That's like what they did with Song to America, where they cut a little reprise on there. So they should have did the same thing with their come out with that drum solo. Other than that, the album, truth be told, and so I would give it a solid B plus. I don't think it's a B plus. I think it's an excellent album, but I don't think it's up there with their great albums. But it's still a pretty good album. That's my take on it. But so then before I also sign off, I also say this. One of the things that I also spoke about and what I always loved about this was Dave Hope's bass playing. And I'm glad that you all mentioned it at the same time because his bass playing on all of Kansas's albums that he appeared on, but you hear his bass drumming on here, his bass playing, and then you also the album is actually very well recorded too, just like what Ken said. It sounds very good, but I just wish that they didn't have that dated drum solo on there. Other than that, that's my take on Song for America.
Rich Williams actually said that the bass tone that they got on Song for America was his favorite from their entire catalog.
Yeah,
I don't think. You listen?
Did they go direct into the board, or what did they do? Do you know?
I wasn't there.
No, but you've read all this stuff.
No, I don't know. That was just part of the.
He was watching documentaries. He's like,
I did. By the way, I did confirm from Kerry Livgren's biography or his book Seeds of Change that Incomudro is actually a made-up word. He didn't find that anywhere. He saw
Lexus is a made-up word too.
Okay, thank you.
No, I like this.
But Incomudro sounds like it could be something, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
I was just adding. I wasn't.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
George, do you think Eric would say that Steve Walsh was the secret weapon to Kansas?
I'm pretty sure he would. He's one of the 7 approved Eric Porter singers.
There are that many?
The Eric Porter singers. I think I need to put this album by then.
That's a small club, right? That's a really small club.
Yes.
Yeah. I would agree with him. I think Walsh is one of the best guys of the 70s prog rock singers, so for sure. His voice has got a certain character to it. I guess I go back with them maybe as far as anybody, maybe with Pete. I was a child of FM radio, and I had a younger, cooler mom who was a 45 collector. So I was deep into music the whole way. And I had a couple babysitters that were like cool young potheads. And when I was up there, they introduced me to the concept of albums instead of tracks, And the 2 albums that were big at the time was the self-titled Boston and Left Overture. And that converted me to I have to stop with these singles and start getting into buying albums, So Kansas is probably the first prog album I ever heard. I would actually agree with almost everything I've been hearing tonight, which kind of surprised me. Down the Road is very pedestrian. I have a disconnect between Walsh and Steinhardt's vocals. Steinhardt's fine. He's technically solid, but he's just not Walsh for me. And so when he sings a lot of times, I kind of have that twinge of, why couldn't this be Walsh?
Yeah. George, even later on, because I think Robbie got better.
There are songs where he's really good, but then there are other songs where I'm like, come on. He's not bad, though. It's just, I really like Walsh, I guess. It's probably that. Down the Road is one of those songs. The verse parts of this song, I think, are pretty lame. The in-between bits musically, I like, but it's a decent tune. Song for America is my second favorite Kansas song after Mary Brown. Love Song for America. And what Chad said about the track listing is exactly right. And the proof is they stuck it first on the live album.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew it was a great lead-off track. 3 years after the album, they still stuck it first on a live album. So that tells you all you need to know. Lamplight Symphony, like Anthony said, this is the Wall showcase. This is like the Wall for this album. He gets to emote. He sounds great. Musically, it does pick up. I'm not wowed musically. I think Walsh carries this tune though, and it's the music is a little bit secondary. Lonely Street, I agree, is terrible. I just take it off. That's my main thing with Kansas is a dichotomy between the proggy stuff and that barroom boogie type stuff where they're the background band in Roadhouse. Just stop with all this stuff. Devil Game, I like. I'm a sucker for odd time. There's a lot of odd time in this tune. It's upbeat. It's got Walsh. I'm in for that song. It's not one of the best songs, but I like it. In Camujo, I'll be the first to say I don't mind the drum solo. It's a product of the times, 70s. Granted, not usually studio albums, usually live albums, but drum solos were everywhere, and less than 2 minutes is not that bad. It could have been a lot worse, I guess. It's a good song for the 12-minute epic. I think I've always hoped for more out of it. Proggers always get excited. They see a 12-minute track on an album and they're like, oh man, this is going to be good. I don't think it's, ooh, this is going to be good quality. It's good. I like it, but could be a little bit better, I believe. So for me, I guess I'm in line with everybody else because I give it 4 stars, which is the same as a B. I'll agree with Chuck. I probably listen to the ones on either side of it more, but I think all their stuff before Two for the Show is a steady build, and this is part of that build. It's probably a smidge better than the debut, but yeah, it's a 4-star album for me. I like it.
Two for the Show is killer.
George, I think I'm not alone. George, I think I'm not alone when I say we're all waiting for a good babysitter story.
Nice.
She was a former model. She was really good looking. But no, I didn't get there.
Very quickly. Rolling Stone magazine, when they reviewed this album, they gave it a 1 star. But that's Rolling Stone for you. So, I don't want to give them any more credit than they need. Yeah, they gave that album originally a 1 star. I mean, a 1 star. And on the All Music Guide, they basically reiterated everything that we said here. That the shorter songs were the ones that Kansas missed the beat on, but the longer songs were the ones where they killed it.
Was there a label release single from this album?
The title track.
Yep.
But edited, right?
3-minute edit. 3 minutes and 3 seconds or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Oh, but it's not worth listening to.
No, it's not.
No. It's like them picking like a excerpt from Supper's Ready and then trying to put it out as a single. It just doesn't work.
Can't do it.
Pete, wasn't Left Overture the make or break album for them? Like if they didn't get a hit with Left Overture, they were gonna get dropped, I think. Because I think Carolyn Waywardson was the last track that Kerry brought into the band, and then it was the one that exploded.
They were packing up. They were heading out to go record the album because, hey guys, I got one more song. I think you need to hear this.
Yep. Yeah, that was basically Left Overture was their 2112.
Yeah,
they had to score big. I mean, granted, these albums did fairly well for them, but they weren't massive sellers. And I think both Mask and this album got some surplus sales based on the success of Left Overture. People started going backwards and buying the albums they missed.
Kind of like with Genesis' Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So curious to see what everybody's favorite song on the album is. Let's see how close we get here. Ken, your favorite track on the album?
I'll go with In Camundro. But Song for America would be close, but I'll go with In Camundro.
Anthony?
In Camundro.
Lewis?
And that drum solo kills it. I gotta go. I mean, judging what is there, I have to choose Song for America because that solo just doesn't vibe with me.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would be In Camundro.
Chad?
Song for America.
Chuck?
Song for America.
George?
Song for America.
Song for America. But we all picked the two songs.
Yeah. Well,
I find it interesting when you're comparing this to Mask. They obviously they got a little bit more refined, even farther. I feel like Mask may have higher highs, but also has, I think, more
lows.
Well, I don't know what to say lows, but more straightforward songs. I mean, I think there's 4 of them on there.
I mean, like It's You and 2 Cents Worth, and
it takes a woman to love a man, 2 cents worth, all the world needs you.
Why?
The rest of the songs,
all the world's fantastic.
It's not fantastic. The other one is too. No, it's not. But the other ones, Icarus, Child of Innocence, Mysteries of Mayhem, and The Pinnacle are all fantastic songs.
Pinnacle's their finest hour.
So I think, if you average these out, you give them a score. I have a hard time picking between them, and I might. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say,
now let's picture this. If instead of releasing 2 albums with mediocre shit, they had only released 1 with all the good stuff.
If you take the 4 really good songs off of each one, you've got an amazing album.
Oh,
yeah. But I also think there's enough that you have too much for a 1975 album. I think you've got too much material.
Now, would you guys say the same about the 2 Rush albums in 1975, or would you keep the tracks on the Rush records?
We're not talking about Rush tonight, are we?
You know what? I think I'm going to do something else on Saturday.
All right. I'll make my own mac and cheese.
If you had an album just called 1975 and you kicked all these boogie barroom blues tunes, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Anthony, to answer your question, I'd probably just release Fly By Night and get rid of Rivendell.
Oh, okay.
All right. So there you have it. Breakdown of Song for America. For those watching, let us know what you think of this album in the comments below. If you have never listened to it, go out and do so and come back and let us know what you think. Do you agree with us that there's some dynamite material on here and maybe a couple tracks that aren't all that special? Or do you think everything's great on here? Or maybe you don't like this at all? I don't know. We'll see.
I know one person that thinks everything's great.
Uh-oh.
That's right.
Janice Cates.
Looking at him.
I know Janice is a big fan. Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for sharing.
So, future programming here on the channel. So we have a non-album study episode coming up in a few weeks that we were going to do next. However, we're going to do something else next, and it's going to be an album study, and we have a very special guest. I generally don't like to give this stuff away too early, but it's been confirmed. We're going to do it. We're going to do an album study on an album that just came out in remixed form, remixed by Steven Wilson. It's Gentle Giant's Interview. And we're going to be joined by Derek Shulman himself for this album study. So not only are we going to rehash the album and tear it apart upside down, but we're going to ask the man himself all about what went into making this very cool Gentle Giant album, arguably the last of the classic run of Gentle Giant albums. So stay tuned. That'll be coming up in just a couple of weeks. So right after the 4th of July break, right? So early July, we'll see you on the next episode of In the Prog Seat for interview with Derek Shulman. For the next album study, I am going to appoint the next person. He hasn't done one yet, but he's going to do the next one. Mr. Ferraro,
I already got the album.
You can
Chad
tell
and I discussed it.
Okay, you can tell us privately, and we'll. So he will be the next after that. But does anybody remember what's the next topic we're doing after the interview? We had another topic. I
thought the next one was band debuts.
Yes, so that'll be that. Yes, so bands that never. We did this on the Hudson Valley Squares, but bands that never bested their debut album. That'll be coming up after the album study for Gentle Giant Interview. And then after that one, Anthony will be manning the album study.
Is there a minimum? Is there a minimum number of albums?
5.
A 5-album run? No, I don't mean that. I mean the they haven't bested their debut, but
oh, I think we said
put
3.
out 2 records.
You said 3.
3, yeah.
Three,
You
yeah.
have to have a minimum of 3 albums. Yeah.
So that eliminates half your Strata East catalog, Ken.
Most of those guys just did 1 album. Those guys did 1. But they were all great albums.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it sounds, but
No.
Yeah. So stay tuned for all that. That's your next 3 episodes of In the Prog Seat right there. So, and we'll reveal what Anthony's pick for the that upcoming album study as well in the weeks to come. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together.
All the damn
time.
For Farmer Chad and George and Ken and Chuck and Anthony and Lewis, I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you real soon here on In the Prog Seat. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.
I'm back now, you hear?
Yeah.